President Trump has delivered a deadly ultimatum to Ukraine. He told them to decide by November 27 whether to accept the United States' proposal to end the Ukraine war. Ukraine is at its biggest crossroads since the war began. Let's examine the situation now. As I said in earlier videos, the United States is pressuring Ukraine to accept a 28-point peace plan to end the war. The Trump administration is accelerating efforts to end the nearly 4-year war, seeking a ceasefire this year. The problem with this peace plan is that it includes territorial concessions from Ukraine, so it's unclear whether Ukraine will accept it or not. Let's review these 28 items and focus on the key ones. What are the 28 points in the peace plan? Ukraine would need to give up the Donbas region and some southern territory to Russia. Currently, the Ukrainian military has about 880,000 troops, but the plan states that this should be reduced to 600,000 and that Ukraine would be prohibited from possessing long-range missiles. And it also includes blocking Ukraine from joining NATO. In addition, some of the sanctions imposed on Russia would be lifted, and Russia would have to leave the G8 in 2014. At that time, there was the Crimea issue. In the end, they also left open the possibility of discussing Russia's return to the G8. Ukraine would also struggle to accept points like making Russian an official language or giving the Ukrainian branch of Russia's forces official command. As a result, early analysis suggested Ukraine would not accept this. Because Ukraine refused, the United States increased pressure on Ukraine. Reuters reports the United States is pressuring Ukraine to accept its peace plan by November 27, threatening to halt future military intelligence and weapon support if they refuse. Of course, it's not impossible for Ukraine to accept this peace plan. Analysis suggests Ukraine may accept this if security guarantees are clearly defined. The current peace plan for Ukraine uses vague language, stating Ukraine will get reliable security guarantees if Russia attacks again. However, according to a draft of the peace plan separately obtained by the American political media outlet Axios, it stated that security guarantees would be provided based on the principle of NATO's Article 5 adjusted to fit the circumstances of this conflict and the interests of the United States and European allies. In other words, it clearly states that if Ukraine is attacked, NATO will intervene. Axios reported that if security guarantees are promised in a form similar to NATO's collective defense, Ukraine is likely to accept it. We'll learn more on November 27th. For now, the draft that Ukraine received mainly contains provisions regarding Ukraine's security guarantees. When the United States pressured Ukraine, major European countries quickly pushed back and reacted strongly. In particular, the 28-point peace plan proposed by the Trump administration sparked strong rejection from various European countries. On November 21, the German government announced details of a call between the leaders of Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and President Zelensky. They agreed Ukraine must maintain its defense against Russia and saw the current frontline stalemate as a basis for negotiations. This approach differs from the United States. Backed peace plan focused on territorial changes, highlighting Europe's dissatisfaction with it. Additionally, the United States Politico report showed even stronger internal European reactions. An European Union official insulted United States envoy Witkoff at the meeting, and a senior European Union politician suggested Witkoff should get psychiatric counseling. This is because they saw the United States proposal as a unilateral decision that ignored their strategic partnership, and there is a sense in Europe that this issue is being regarded as a breach of trust with the United States. Europe had been considering using its frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. It's about 206 trillion won, but practical issues have delayed support. First, if frozen Russian assets are used to support Ukraine, it causes trust issues with the European Union, as countries in conflict may avoid investing there for fear their money could be seized similarly. Also, most of the assets are kept at a settlement institution in Belgium called Euroclear. The biggest obstacle is the concern that the risk of Russian retaliation will be concentrated on Belgium. Therefore, the European Union cannot currently use Russia's frozen assets to aid Ukraine. Now, with President Trump's pressure, Europe shows it's stuck and can't act either way. Zelensky, Ukraine's president, stated on November 21 that the country is at a critical crossroads and he will never make a negotiation choice that betrays the people. He said that the pressure Ukraine is facing right now is stronger than ever, and that every option comes with a heavy price. If Ukraine accepts the 28 provisions that require giving up territory, the future of the country will be at risk, but if they refuse, they will have to endure harsh consequences and a prolonged reduction. Additionally, strained relations with key allies could lead to political isolation, while the internal situation worsens. A major energy company corruption scandal has eroded public trust in the government, with parliament members citing a leadership vacuum. With the war ongoing, public fatigue is rising and criticism of leadership is increasing in polls. Zelensky now faces his biggest crisis as a wartime leader. Officials in the presidential office warn of internal divisions, suggesting Zelensky's influence may weaken in future negotiations. Meanwhile, Russia is taking an even more aggressive and blatant approach. There is an interpretation that based on their recent favorable momentum on the front lines, Russia is showing its intention not to be dragged into negotiations. Speculation about Pokrovsky's imminent collapse signals Russia has gained the upper hand both tactically and psychologically. In particular, the small infiltration unit tactics that the Russian military is employing are designed to maximize the fatigue of the defenders and delay their response time. Russia keeps deploying fragmented troops despite losses, taking advantage of Ukraine's struggle to maintain strength across a broad front. Small cracks appearing in various places are gradually destabilizing the front line and increasing the burden on the Ukrainian military. In this situation, Russia seems to have gained the confidence that it can demand greater concessions even if it agrees to negotiations, and Vladimir Putin's direct visit to the command post to encourage the military leadership to continue operations was also intended to strengthen internal unity and demonstrate a commitment to a prolonged war. Russian state media are also heavily promoting this visit to rally public opinion, leading to assessments that there is a high possibility of even stronger offensives in the future. The international community is deeply divided over this peace proposal. Republican House Representative Don Baker voiced strong concerns, comparing the proposal to Munich in 1938. He warned that this peace proposal could become a second Munich agreement. At that time, the European powers chose appeasement by handing over the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia to Germany under the pretext of controlling Hitler's expansion. Hitler promised to halt territorial expansion, but quickly broke that vow, leading to Europe's order collapsing. As a result, World War II followed the proposal. That's why Baker warns Russia may act more boldly due to this agreement. Michael Claesen, Chief of Staff and top Swedish military commander, also shared these concerns. He argued that if Russia gains ground in Ukraine, it may test NATO's collective defense. He noted that all of Europe, not just the Baltic states, could face pressure, and given Russia's past actions, this peace proposal might spark an even larger conflict. These criticisms suggest the current agreement, though seemingly a way to end the war, might actually weaken Europe's security foundations. Supporters of the peace proposal highlight Ukraine's structural issues and argue the West or international community isn't solely responsible for the prolonged war. They believed the Ukrainian government had long struggled with corruption and misused international aid received at the start of the war. After corruption scandals among the military leadership, controversies over military supplies, and confusion during the mobilization process, a series of incidents fueled distrust. There were also repeated cases where operations that could have turned the tide were lost due to the command system at the front not functioning properly. Many criticized Zelensky's unilateral decisions for worsening the battlefield situation. Despite AIDS' opposition, he pushed reckless offensives and made political decisions disconnected from the front lines, causing more troop losses. Further mobilizations to replace these troops led to peak public fatigue. In this situation, those in favor of a peace plan emphasize that the continued requests for large-scale support are burdening the economies of surrounding countries and worsening international inflation and instability in the energy market. They argue that the war should be stopped and international order restored before it is too late. At the same time, there are growing calls for establishing long-term deterrence measures to militarily constrain Russia and prevent further aggression, even after the full-scale war ends. What will this peace lead to, and how will future historians judge it? I'd also like to hear your thoughts. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.